Okay, so this is going to be the first meeting of the City of Fitchburg Census Complete Count Committee. We don't yet have a committee chair or vice chair. So as a staff liaison, I'll just move things until we do designate a chair and vice chair. So we'll call the meeting to order. It's 10:34 approximately. The first order of business is designation of committee chair and vice chair. For those that aren't familiar with how this works, basically someone will nominate a chair. There'll need to be a second to that nomination. Dorothy, help me out if I'm stating something in error. And then there'll need to be a vote.
And you say any other nominations 3 times.
Okay. So we'll designate a chair, and then we'll designate a vice chair. And essentially the responsibilities of the chair is to run the meeting. Beyond that, not any responsibilities. If the chair is absent, the vice chair would run the meeting. So we're not asking you guys to do much beyond just essentially run the meetings. And for those that aren't familiar with how to run a meeting, we have people here to help out with that. So with that, I will open it up to any nominations for committee chair.
I'm going to nominate Dave for chair. He doesn't get to run very many meetings, I don't think, officially.
Not at this level, no.
And just so people are aware of the kind of the burden here, we're probably looking at a couple meetings a month until I would say early spring. So certainly not a large commitment either. So is it a second? Is that what we're looking for Dave?
Well, does he accept the nomination?
I do.
And then any other nominations 3 times.
So I just say that 3 times. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Hearing none, we vote.
And by popular acclaim.
So I guess we'll call for a vote for David Hill to be Complete Count Committee Chair. Just, I guess, roll call or just aye or nay?
Voice vote.
Just voice vote. Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? David is our committee chair.
All right.
And the gavel over.
And if you need help, with meeting processes, Dorothy, I think obviously is well informed. So I guess the chair would then call for vice chair nominations.
So is there a call? So what would I start out with? Is there a call for vice chair?
So somebody hopefully would nominate someone as a vice chair.
And I would be willing if others do not, but I would happily let others as well.
So would one of you want to nominate Alder Krause?
Certainly, I'll nominate Alder Dorothy Krause to be the
Vice chair.
vice
Yep.
chair of this committee. Is there a second to that? Do you accept that?
Yeah.
Is there a second to that?
And then I call for 3 nominations.
Yep.
3 times. Any other nominations for vice chair? Any other nominations for vice chair? Any other nominations for vice chair? Hearing none, we'll vote on Alder Krause as vice chair. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Dorothy is our vice chair. Thank you both for doing this. So I guess then Dave will just kind of move through the agenda. So essentially we'll just move down through the items. I guess I should have pointed out how to get to the agenda packets. So everyone's logged in. You should, once you just kind of click on your screen to get to the kind of the city setup. Yep, I guess it says sign in, so click sign in. Everybody there? Hit sign in, Carmen. Okay, and then you'll see a folder on the bottom right called Agenda Packets. Double click on that. And then these are basically all our city committees. Double click on that. Yep, and we are the Census Committee. Does everyone see that? And then basically we kind of create a standard syntax for the meeting so that CCC 2020-0210, that is February 2nd meeting. And in this PDF, you'll have the agenda as well as all the accompanying meeting materials. So Carmen, you can just click on that guy, yeah. Everybody good? Dorothy, you good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
So yeah, Dave, we'll just kind of run through the agenda.
Yeah.
So now I guess we're on number 2, which we don't have any minutes since this is our first meeting, but I'll turn things over to you.
Okay, so we're going past approval of minutes because there are none. Public appearances for non-agenda items. I don't believe we have any of those. Agenda review, agenda items, training, Patty Gillette with U.S. Census Bureau.
And I'll just give some background. So Patty is actually with the U.S. Census Bureau, here to provide some general training overview of what this committee could think about doing. Patty has a presentation, which I will get ready here for her. Patty, I'll let you drive up here.
Oh, sure.
So basically just to pan, if you're familiar with
Sure.
PDFs or?
Yep.
Yeah, so there's just kind of a forward button.
Wonderful.
Get to your slides.
Well, thank you for having me here today, and I just want to say I'm here on behalf of Becky Schigel, who is your actual partnership specialist for Dane County and is otherwise occupied today at the open house at the Madison area office. So I'm happy to be here. I have never been to Fitchburg before, so I probably have been through it, but I've never been here before, so thank you for having me. So I'm here basically to talk a little bit about our community partnership and engagement program. And let's see, do I need to go?
You gotta hover over the slide.
Oh, okay.
And then see that down arrow. That'll take you right to the next slide.
Okay, great. Okay, so to start out with, I'd like to thank you on behalf of our regional director, Marilyn Sanders. She is the director at the Chicago Regional Census Center office. She wants to thank you for participating and coming together as a complete count committee. The Chicago area office, we have 8 states that we oversee the 2020 census in. In addition to Wisconsin, we have Missouri, Arkansas, Iowa, Minnesota, Michigan, Illinois, and Indiana. So we have a large territory that we are covering. We have probably over 200 partnership specialists working these areas, somewhere between 15 and 20 in Wisconsin. So, and as I said, Becky is the partnership specialist that is assigned to Dane County. So going back to that slide very quickly, I just want to say that Marilyn Sanders, our regional director's goal, is something she wants to share with all of you, and that is that our goal is to count everyone once, only once, and in the right place. And to that end, that is why we are asking our communities to form complete count committees to assist with that. Okay. So one of the first things that people always ask is, why do we have a census? We have a census because it is a constitutional mandate. Article 1, Section 2 of our Constitution requires a literal head count every 10 years of the population. And that is every person residing in the United States. That is all ages, races, ethnicities, citizens and non-citizens of all the states and the territories and island areas. August 2nd, 1790 was the date of the very first census. So this is our 24th census. A couple of things that some people are not familiar with regard to the census is the fact that the data that is collected is protected. Title 13 of the U.S. Code was passed in about 1940 something by Congress, it prohibits the Census Bureau from sharing the data with anyone except in statistical format. So we cannot share our data with Congress, we cannot share our data with the FBI, the CIA, ICE, or even the President of the United States, other than in statistical format. One of the main reasons that we conduct the census, of course, is to determine what's called apportionment, and that is the legislative representation of the United States. As you are aware, I'm sure, each state has 2 senators, but congressional representation is determined by population. So the census determines how many representatives out of 435 the state of Wisconsin will get this time around. In 2010, several states lost representation, a representative, and other states, of course, gained. So it is important that we make sure that we have a complete and accurate count so that Wisconsin is fairly represented. In addition to the representation and redistricting that goes on after the census is important, provides important data for the distribution of $675+ billion annually. There are a number of programs that depend on census data, and the federal government disperses the dollars based on that program. So again, it is important that we have a complete and accurate count for the state of Wisconsin, the county of Dane, and the city of Fitchburg to make sure that you get your fair share of the federal dollars. So in 2010, the mail-in participation rates, as you can see, this is actually a map that you can actually go to online. It's at census.gov, and you can find this map, and it is a map of the 2000 and the 2010 mail-back participation rates, as we call them. What this means is the darker the orange this map is, the higher the rate of mail-back participation. As you can see, Dane County was 83%. Fitchburg itself was 85%, so a little bit over the county. And, it was 78% in 2010. This was a slide prepared by Becky, so I apologize. I'm a little confused on what this means. But it looks like Fitchburg was 78% in 2010. The state as a whole, Wisconsin, was 82%. It was #1 in the country. What we mean by mail-back participation rate is this is the number of people who actually self-responded and mailed back their forms. So when 82% mailed back their forms, we only had to knock on the doors of 18%. Nationwide, I believe it was 74% mail-back participation rate. So Wisconsin was #1 in the country, followed by Minnesota right behind at 81%. Fitchburg was a little bit below that at 78%. So. This time around, the census has been redesigned a little bit to facilitate the count. There are a number of bubbles here that I want to explain a little bit, but the first thing that we have to do in the census is establish where to count. As I said, we want to make sure that we count everybody only once and in the right place. So where is that place? The census, one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that the census is address-based. So we do not mail to people, we mail to addresses. So we have an extensive database of every address in the country. We update that every 10 years. In the past, we've sent what we call address canvassers out and about with maps and clipboards, and they have literally map spotted things on an actual map. This time around, we were able to do a lot of it from the office with satellite imagery. We've been working with the post office for the past 10 years to update addresses, and we also have been working with communities and local governments, and you may have been familiar with a program called Luca. So you are, yes. Mm-hmm. So we didn't have to do quite as much address canvassing as we have in the past, but we were still out in the field last August and September, making sure that we had everything correct. That is finished, so that was our first operation. So now we have moved into motivating folks to self-respond. Obviously, self-response is important to us. It saves taxpayers a lot of money if people self-respond. If they don't self-respond, we have to move to bubble number 3, where we have to go out and knock on doors to count the population. And bubble number 4, we call that non-response follow-up. It is the largest mobilization of a civilian workforce in history. We are looking at hiring probably upwards of 500,000 enumerators across the country this time around. So that is, of course, another area we would like your assistance in hiring. And then, of course, we tabulate the data and release the census results. So when we talk about mailbag response, what we do is we mail out an invitation to respond. This time around, folks will have 3 ways to respond, which is a big new redesign plus. In the past, it's always been paper and mailback, but this time around, folks will be able to go online to respond to the census. They will be able to respond on the phone, or they will be able to respond in the paper method, mailback method. The first invitation to self-respond will be mailed to folks between March 12th and the 20th. There'll be a staggered mailing so that we don't overwhelm the systems. March 16th to the 24th, we'll begin sending out reminder letters to those folks who haven't self-responded. Then they'll get a postcard, and then they'll get another letter in the actual paper questionnaire this time. And then they will get a final reminder postcard. And following that, in May, we will begin to follow up in person with those folks. So the census this time around, we're hoping to make it easy to respond. As I said, there are 3 ways to respond: online, by the phone, or by paper. We also will have online and phone support in those 10 languages that are highlighted there. We will have translation support in up to 60 languages listed there. And the paper form will be available in both English and Spanish. So for non-response follow-up, which will begin in early May, census takers will personally visit housing units to count or enumerate the households. If no one is home, they'll leave a notice of visit and encourage self-response. In most situations, they'll make at least 6 attempts to resolve a case. As I said, this will begin in early May, and we hope to conclude by July. One of the first operations that we deal with, actually the census has started, I should say, that this is the first operation that will be going on around here. But you probably have heard on the news that we did start the census a few weeks ago in January in remote Alaska. Of course, a lot of folks go, Alaska in January, you know? But as it turns out, that's when you can get around there. It's frozen and you can get around. Also, the folks are congregated in a village-type setting, and then as soon as the weather warms up, they disperse to hunt and fish, and so we count them early in January. So that is the first official operation of the 2020 census. One of the second operations that we do is called group quarters. This is when we count those folks that are living in a group arrangement and they're not related. Some examples of that would be college residence halls, prisons, nursing homes, residential treatment centers, group homes, those types of things. We begin contacting them, and we are going to begin contacting them actually this week. Some of them, because they have some options on how they are counted depending upon the group living situation. And so we begin to reach out to them and say, we are going to want to count the folks, you know, living in this situation, and how would we best do that, and that kind of thing, so we can set this up to get them counted. So we ask for your assistance in this, in the group quarters situation, because we know that sometimes these facilities can be, some of them a little fluid. You know, we have maybe assisted living that become nursing homes, or hospitals that become nursing homes, and things like that might have happened quite recently, and we may not have picked up on that, or it might have happened after we were out doing our address canvassing and collecting the information. So I would ask you to get a hold of Becky if you do have any information that you think might be important for us to know about some new group quarters facilities or something that might be missed. So one of the other operations that's part of group quarters is our service-based enumeration. This is when we count those people who are experiencing homelessness. And this is where we count them at places where they receive services. So shelters, soup kitchen, food vans, emergency shelters, if they're staying in churches, those types of things. Again, we would like your assistance with that. We know that sometimes these things change depending upon the season or what is going on. I have heard that in some places they can stay in a church one night and then they can't stay the next night. So we want to make sure that we have a complete list of those places. We will be out counting the service-based enumeration right around the 48 hours surrounding the 1st of April. April 1st is Census Day. Okay, we say that that is the day that we want you to say, where were you living and staying on April 1st? So basically what we ask folks to do is to be counted where they live and sleep most of the time. If there is some, if that's hard to determine because they move around a lot, then we would say that we want them counted where they're living and staying on April 1st, which is why we do the service-based enumeration right around April 1st. So again, your assistance with identifying any places where folks might be staying, any service-based services that we would want to make sure that we contact so that we can reach out to them about counting folks. We also have what we call enumeration of transitory locations. This is when we count those folks who are living in somewhat non-traditional housing. So sometimes this is temporary, and so we're talking about, again, recreation vehicles, campgrounds, hotels, motels, where you know that folks might be living, marinas, those types of things. Again, your assistance with making sure that we have a complete and accurate list of those locations is really important. We begin what we call a targeted non-sheltered outdoor locations, and this again is something that we do within that 48 hours surrounding the 1st of April. We will be wanting to find out from you if you know where folks are staying in vacant buildings, perhaps under freeways or bridges or overpasses, that type of thing. So again, we want to make sure that we have an up-to-date list, as these are often transitory. So one of the reasons that, of course, that I'm here is that we know how important it is to work with our local partners to both engage the public, educate the public, and encourage them to participate in the census, particularly those folks who are less likely to self-respond. So we want to make sure that we are engaging and educating through use of our community organizations, municipal governments such as yourself, our faith-based institutions, which are often serve as very trusted voices for the census. Local businesses and the media, schools and colleges, all of those organizations are important to us to make sure that we are able to count some of our hard-to-count demographics. Now, this is a list of what we traditionally have found through the census that are more difficult to count populations. Every community is different. Every community has their own hard-to-count populations. The reason that we form a complete count committee and ask for communities to form a complete count committee is because we know that they know where their hard-to-count populations are. They also likely know how to reach them. And so this is why it's vital that we have an active complete count committee such as yourselves. So we know that snowbirds are often difficult to count. And senior citizens, obviously those that are homeless, as I mentioned earlier. And as I said, every community is a little different on their makeup of their hard-to-count populations. So a complete count committee, what is it exactly that you have signed up for? It's basically a team of local representatives that are brought together by a municipal or a community leader with the purpose of assisting with the 2020 census. So sometimes it's formed by official proclamation, sometimes it's just a group of people willing to come together and work together to ensure that everyone in their community gets counted. Their purpose is to kind of act as 2020 census champions, to kind of promote the census and get the message out, educate folks as to why it's so important that they are counted, to point to the programs and the funding that comes through those census data to the community so that folks understand just how important it is to be counted. Also to serve as trusted voices and ambassadors for those folks that are a little uncertain or leery of providing this information. The complete count committees can monitor the participation, and we will have a database, an electronic database with up-to-date participation numbers that you can look at and you can see who's responding and who isn't in your community. And that way you can target some outreach to those areas. And we, of course, want to target in advance those areas that we know tend to have low response rates anyway. So this is some ideas of who might be included in your CCC. You've already formed your CCC. That doesn't mean that you can't add members. You can always add. It's, as I like to say, it's your community, it's your count, it's your complete count committee. You are the ones who are determining who you need to reach out to, who you want to. You can always add folks to your committee at any time. You can form subcommittees, all of those types of things. But these are some folks that you would probably at least want to make sure that you have someone on your committee reaching out to. If they don't actually join your committee, that's fine. At least you have a connection with them. And health departments, social services for sure, nonprofits in the area, particularly those that are working with those hard-to-count populations. Universities and colleges are particularly important. We know that college students living off campus, if they're living on campus in campus housing or residence halls, they will likely be counted in the group quarters count. But we have those that are living off campus that we want to make sure get counted, where they use the most resources. And where is that? Here, right? Faith-based communities, we definitely, those are some of our most trusted voices, particularly with those groups and populations that are hesitant to respond. Libraries are great sources for information. They're also great locations for folks to be able to respond online if they don't have access at home, that kind of thing. So one of the things that I mentioned earlier is jobs. The number of folks that we have to hire to conduct this census is a little bit mind-boggling. It is a huge, huge number, and our recruitment pool is very low in Wisconsin. We know that this is a difficult climate to hire. A lot of folks already are not looking for work right now, and we have a very low unemployment rate. One thing that I do want to make clear is that our biggest need is probably, we are hiring office clerks and supervisors and that type of thing, particularly in the Madison office. Now, those are generally full-time positions with benefits. They will be temporary, but we do have a need for those at all times. Our biggest need, though, is going to be for our census enumerators or census takers, as we call them. We are looking at, we are way behind in our recruitment of those. Now, these are part-time, temporary positions. We're probably talking 20 to 30 hours per week. And this will be, as I said, most of the time, we are hiring right now. We do have folks working the group quarters and doing things like that right now. But our biggest need will be in May through July. So it'll be nice weather. It'll be part-time temporary. And we will be recruiting, and I will show you the pay rate in a minute when I can go online and show you for Dane County. But we also pay 58 cents per mile. In Wisconsin, right now the pay rates are running from $17 to $24 an hour, so it's not bad, 58 cents per mile for any miles driven. And as I said, it's part-time temporary, so we are looking for those seniors that like to get out and about, particularly in the spring. And also college students. It's a great job for college students, or those graduating high school. They have to be 18 years old, but they don't have to be 18 right now to apply. They just have to be 18 by the time that they're sworn in and actually accept the position. So that would be a great job for those kids. Also, anybody looking for a part-time position, this is a wonderful opportunity and of great service to the community as well. And you get paid for it.
Do you want questions as we go along?
Sure, that's fine. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
One was, do people have to have a car? And two is, what restrictions are there? I presume that people need to be a citizen. Is there any criminal history kind of limitations?
Folks will have to be fingerprinted, and they will have to pass a background check. This is something that is a little more detailed than I can say. What we tell folks is to go ahead and apply. And right now, no, the citizen requirement has been removed in some areas, mostly because we need folks who speak various languages in order to conduct the census. So that is not a requirement either, but they do have to be 18, they will need to be fingerprinted, and they will need to undergo a security check. We want folks to apply right now as soon as possible, because obviously we are clearing 500,000 plus people, more than that even, across, like 3 times that across the country in order to hire. So it can take a little while to get through the security check, and we would like folks to apply, accept a position, and then we have to get them through the security check, and then of course they have a paid training.
So you said non-citizens can apply?
Yes. We encourage everyone to apply and see what happens. The only folks that I know of that cannot work are elected officials unless it is a nonpartisan position. We do have some nonpartisan elected officials. Yes, so it's important that they stipulate that they are nonpartisan. But other than that, we just encourage everyone to just apply and then find out. So this is our hiring and recruiting timeline. As you can see, we are still recruiting folks, and we will be recruiting them. Actually, we haven't stopped. It looks like we stopped the 1st of February, but we haven't. We are continuing on, and we are actually increasing our efforts considerably in Wisconsin because, as I said, we've had a difficult time recruiting here. So we are beginning to make the job offers and conduct the background checks right now. We will continue that through April. And then the trainings will begin in March and continue through the middle of May.
Do you know where they're doing recruitment efforts? Thinking of schools, particularly
Right.
trade schools and things like that.
Well, we do have we are at workforce development throughout the state. We are working with the universities on most of the universities, not all of them, on a system called Handshake, I believe. And we also have all of our communities and partners, we are asking to post these signs wherever they can, anywhere and everywhere, so that folks will know this. We're asking We have smaller ones too. We're asking folks to not only post these, but to put them in their newsletters, on their Facebook pages, on their websites, that type of thing, so that we get the message out about these jobs that we're hiring for. So that is how we're going on. We also have what we call applicant days, because we know that the application is online. It's totally online, and we know that there are a lot of folks who maybe do not have access to go online at home, or are uncomfortable applying for a position online without having someone there to ask questions of, that kind of thing. So what we are doing is we're hosting applicant days. And so we're asking our communities, our libraries, senior centers, municipal governments, anywhere like that, if they would host an applicant day, when they know that folks are coming in, are going to be around for special events. We have applicant days there too. What that means is we will send our recruiting assistants, will come out, and they actually have little iPads, and they will set up a table, and they will be there with their iPads, and they will actually help folks actually apply right then and there on the iPads for the jobs and answer their questions for them.
Are you able to work with, like, League of Women Voters when they're doing voter registration drives to do this also at the same time?
Unfortunately, I can't tell you what I'm familiar with. I'm not that familiar with what's going on in Dane County, because my counties are in the middle of the state, and so I wish I could tell you more about what is going on in Dane County, but I know that part of our open house today at the area office is for recruiting purposes. And I know that we are working with the League of Women Voters on a national level and on the local level. They are close partners of ours, so we are working with them. Also, as I mentioned, this is the census, it is nonpartisan. We are able to post things at the polling places that will be coming up, which we know is going to be an important outreach. So we can get you all the materials you might want for those types of situations. As I said, in some of our counties, we have the county clerks distributing the materials with the polling information and materials, so that this will be posted. We are looking for any ways that you can think of to help us to recruit the staff that we need to complete the count. So if you have ideas, if you want to host an applicant day, or know of organizations or places that would be great for hosting an applicant day, please let Becky know, and she will get it set up for you. She'll get those recruiting assistants out there and get the people hired, because obviously we want local folks counting local folks.
Mm-hmm.
And we want those local folks spending the dollars they make locally too, right? So.
And that helps with the comfort level with people also, if you can say, oh, I live just right up over there.
Right, exactly. So this is kind of our timeline, and one thing that I'm here about is to hope that the Complete Count Committee can help us out with some of that. So as I said, the details are we are training for a variety of temporary jobs. As I said, we do have some need for office staff. So for those folks who think that they don't want to maybe go out and knock on doors, but prefer to sit at a desk inside, I'm sure there will be jobs we're continually hiring at the Madison office. So again, you apply online. And as I said, we'd be happy to set up applicant days if that would work for you, or for other places in your community. The pay and locations depends upon where exactly you are. There's different rates of pay. And different rates of pay for different positions. So what I want to talk about next is where do you get the information to share with your stakeholders, with your constituencies, with your organizations and outreach. One of the best places is at 2020census.gov. We have outreach fact sheets there and posters, and we have these targeted for virtually any demographic you could think of. We also have information there on how to avoid scams. And we also have 2020 census.gov rumors for any of the rumors that start popping up so that you can
And they
find.
will.
Yes, they will. And so this can help because you can go there and say, I heard this rumor, what's the response? You know, those types of things. As I mentioned too, we do have media specialists available for you. So if you do find yourself in a situation where you're not certain, you know, things happen, what to say or what to do, we have media specialists who are there to assist you in talking with the media, that kind of thing. They will give you guidance on lots of things like that. We have language specialists available, so if you have groups that perhaps need to hear the message in Spanish, we can do that. So at the beginning of this, I don't have any of Becky's business cards, but at the beginning of this PowerPoint was Becky's contact information, and it's also at the end, so I'll show that to you. So
So when people are going around to doors, do they have technology available to them?
yes, they will be, all of this will be electronically, it will be on a computer. They will be carrying laptops. Yes, so.
If they go to a home where the people who answer the door speak some language that they absolutely don't know, is there translation services available on that technology to help them?
There might be on the technology. I can't speak to that because I'm not that familiar with field operations. But I do know that we have what we call language cards, so that if we come to a door and obviously they don't speak English and we don't recognize the language, we have a card that we can hand them that has, I believe, 49 languages on it that says, hello, I'm from the U.S. Census Bureau, blah, blah, blah. And so they can see that in their language and why we're there. And we ask them to provide us with a phone number. And then what will happen is we will usually have someone call them in their language to collect the information, is usually how it works for the surveys. I'm guessing there will be something very similar for this 2020 census. So, and I should say some folks are not familiar with what we do the rest of the time, but we do run a lot of surveys out of the Chicago office, and these are all funded and by Congress, and one of them is the American Community Survey that I'll talk about a little bit more about in a few minutes and show you some data from that. But the American Community Survey, I don't know if you remember, if anybody in this room ever received the long form of the census. No? Prior to 2000, I believe it was, every 6th household in the country got what was called the long form of the census. And it was a long form. It has a lot of detailed information about how many bathrooms you had and how many square feet and lots of different information about the household and that type of thing. But after 2000, Congress stopped with the long form of the census, and they instituted what's called the American Community Survey, which is basically the long form of the census, but we collect that data now on a monthly basis, ongoing monthly basis. So every month, a selection of across the country is selected to complete the American Community Survey, which is part of the decennial census, but no longer done every 10 years. The data is more accurate and up to date now than before. It took a long time to analyze it, and then of course you didn't collect it for another 10 years, so that was, this is much more up to date and accurate information. And so we do that on a regular basis. We also conduct surveys for the CDC, Department of Congress, and also other government agencies. So we are in the field all of the time for some of these surveys, and as I said, we have, that is how we have dealt with those language considerations, and I'm sure it will be somewhat similar for the 2020 census. But if they go online or on the phone, they will be able to have translational support for up to 60 languages, so it's going to be pretty good. So also at this 2020census.gov website, you can actually see the questionnaire. You can look at the letter that is going to be sent to folks. You can look at those things in Spanish and English, and you can access toolkits that we have, which are really great. We have toolkits that will allow you to cut and paste things to put in, just to pop out of there and pop in your Facebook page, or pop in your newsletter, or pop in your website. So we're trying to make it easy. So this is the actual questionnaire form, as I mentioned. It is available on that 2020census.gov. Actually, it's 9 questions. So people always say, how long will it take to fill out? That depends on the makeup of your household. Basically, it's 9 quick questions. However, if you have a household of 15, then that might take a little while. But generally speaking, it's fairly quick and simple. I feel like, what did I do? How did I go? Where did I go? Okay, there we go. What I do want to mention is that we do not, on the 2020 census, ask for a social security number. We do not ask for income. We do not ask for contributions. And we do not ask what political party you are affiliated with. So there are a lot of things.
No citizenship question either.
No citizenship question. So there are a lot of questionnaires coming folks' way that I'm sure are going to look like the census. So it's important to make sure that folks understand that those are things we do not ask. So, and of course, 2020census.gov is a place to go for a lot of information. So what are the next steps as a CCC? How do you reach out to the community? How do you raise awareness? As I've mentioned, some of the things are promoting the census jobs, basically by just making sure that we have things posted around. We have these little handouts that people can take with them and go home and apply. If you would like to host an applicant day, that would be really great. Some cities and some CCCs are hosting census kickoffs right around April 1st, some on April 1st. They're just planning some kind of event where they ask perhaps the elected officials and some dignitaries within the community to come together, and they have the press there, and they just have some kind of big, this is a census. They come up with really interesting ideas about what to do in order to kind of get the public's attention that this is, the census is coming, that kind of thing, and participate. So. One of the other things that complete count committees can do is identify resources and places we can go to reach out to those hard to count areas and populations. So you know your communities, and you know where we can get into the grassroots level with our information. You can promote the 2020 census at your upcoming events and at any of the organizations that maybe you have outreach to at their events. Some ideas are hosting interfaith community breakfasts and forums. One of our ways that we are trying to promote the census right now, and we're very much involved in that at this point, is our Statistics in the Schools program. You can see this at 2020census.gov/SIS. We have a curriculums there for grades pre-K through 12th grade. To teach kids about statistics and the census and data. What we want to make sure is that we know that if kids learn that the census is important, they're going to take that home, tell their parents it's important, right? It's also important for school funding, so we want to make sure kids know that. The other thing is that we want these kids to understand statistics and data, because that's the future. And so they need to understand how important statistics and data is. So that's part of this curriculum and this outreach to schools that we are conducting right now. We do have a March 2nd through the 6th is our Statistics in Schools Week. So what we are hoping is that we can get all of our schools to have some type of an event or program or something that promotes participation in the census that week in their schools. So, of course, another way is, as we've talked about previously, is to incorporate our information in newsletters, social media posts, podcasts, mailings, websites. And I believe that you had some information about, texting and some of those things. What is the one that's the neighborhood?
Nextdoor.com.
Nextdoor.com, those types of things. So those are all great ways to reach into the grassroots level.
I also just added mayoral proclamation to make the month of April 2020 Census Month.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there's lots of, there's so many opportunities, and if you go online, you can connect with those kinds of things, and also if you connect with Becky later on, she will be probably sending you out information about here's what this place is doing. I mean, we already know that. I know that UW-Whitewater, the Whitewater CCC, for instance, took these little job cards like this and put them on table tents and had them in the dining halls at UW-Whitewater. Some folks are making library or bookmarks out of things like this and handing them out at the library. Some of our smaller communities where really they only have maybe a cafe and a grocery and a gas station actually have made little placemats. And they've taken our things and put them on a placemat, and they're putting those out for the month of, like March and April or whatever, to get folks to respond to the census. So there are just lots of really great ideas out there that Becky will share with you about, and I'm sure you probably have even more ideas about how things might work best around here. So that's kind of what we're doing. We're looking at each area on its own and saying, that's why we have the complete count committees, is to make it local. So this is our mail contact strategies. I'll go through this very, very quickly, but about 95% of our housing units will receive their census invitations in the mail. So this map, and I don't know if you can see it that well, shows the mail contact strategies for each community, and it is a little hard. But if you go to that website there, you can pull it up and actually drill down and look at it more closely. But most housing units will first receive a letter asking them to go online to complete the questionnaire. So those are the purple areas, and so these are called Internet First on the map. Those areas that are less likely to respond online will receive a paper questionnaire along with their first invitation. So these are called Internet Choice. So if you remember, the Internet First folks will receive a paper questionnaire on their fourth mailing if they haven't responded yet. So then there is some areas that we know are highly bilingual will receive invitations in bilingual Spanish and English, while most of the other areas will receive their invitations in English. So we do have some variations in our mailings and what goes out to various communities and areas based on what we know about their demographic makeup.
For the online folks, is there any problem with filling it out on their phone?
No, they should be able to do that. My understanding is that you should be able to do it online on your phone, or you can actually call and do it. So you could call and do it over the phone while you're standing in line at the grocery store. It should be that quick and simple, or you could get on your phone and do it online while you're standing there in line too. So one thing we are trying to do is to make it easy to self-respond. So So this is another area. One of the ways that we know all of this information about some of these areas is through this response outreach area mapper, which you can find it and go see, look at census.gov/Rome. So as I mentioned, this is data from the American Community Survey that I talked about a few minutes ago that we conduct on an ongoing basis. Right now, it says covers 2012 to 2016, but it actually has been updated, and it's now 2013 to 2017 five-year estimates. So what it tells us is it gives us a huge amount of demographic information about particular census tracts. Now, tracts are usually around 4,000 or 5,000 folks. We don't go much lower than that for any of this information, and the reason is because remember, we are prohibited from sharing any kind of data that might identify someone. And once you get down below 3,000 or 4,000 folks, and we do collect data by blocks, we do collect data and that kind of thing, but we cannot release that information because it might identify someone. So we have this tracts is about as low as we go as a population. You can drill down into those tracts and see the makeup of the demographic makeup of the population. The darker or deeper the color of blue, the higher, this is kind of crazy, the higher the low response score. So a low response score is a score that is derived from several different measures, but one of them is how do these folks respond to the American Community Survey, which we run very similar to the 2020 census in that we send out a letter, we ask people to go online or call on the phone to answer this questionnaire, and if they don't, we send someone out to knock on their door. So the higher the low response score, the darker the blue. The low response scores that we are particularly concerned about are those that are at 20 or above. And so, but actually we're concerned about everywhere, even at that, because, you know, sometimes things just drop off. If, you know, one of the reasons I think that Wisconsin was so great in 2010 is because they really worked hard to be great. And I think we have to continue working hard to continue to be great. So the type of enumeration area is another thing I want to talk about here. And this is, the type of enumerations include self-response, update enumerate, remote Alaska, update leave, and the military. Each enumeration type has a distinct color code. So basically I'm guessing most of Fitchburg will be self-response, which means they will get a letter in the mail and be asked to go online or self-respond. Sometimes we do go out and we conduct what's called update enumerate. That means we actually we don't send anything by mail, we just go out in person, and while we're knocking on the door, we collect the data. That is usually in remote areas, like remote Alaska or places like that, where it doesn't make sense to leave something and try to come back. It's hard to get there. We also do this oftentimes, tribal areas prefer to do update enumerate. So we do update enumerate in Wisconsin in some of our tribal areas. Update leave is a little different. Update leave is when we go out and we don't mail the letter to the household. We actually go out and take the letter and leave it at their door. The reason for that is that perhaps they don't have a mailing, they don't receive mail at their address. So let's talk about post office boxes, that kind of thing. We can't mail to post office boxes because they are not associated necessarily with an address. And as I said, the census is address-based. So if mail is not received at a particular address, we send an enumerator out there to drop off the letter. So that's update leave. And then, of course, our military installations are often collected in a different manner totally, completely from that. So those are the types of enumeration that we have going on. I really don't know for sure what the level of update leave will be in Fitchburg. I don't know if you have a lot of P.O. boxes. Some of my areas in Dodge County they're practically all PO boxes, so, you know.
Reeseville
Okay,
does not deliver to homes.
yeah.
The only option is a post office box.
So those are places where we're going to need enumerators, and we're gonna need those enumerators early. So like I said, we're hiring all the time because we're going to need folks all the time. So as I said, this is pretty much the end of my presentation. I can take you online and show you census.gov if I'm available to do that. I can show you that Rome map if you'd like. If you just want to meet and talk about what you want to do, that's great too. It's basically, as I said, it's your count, it's your committee. This is Becky's contact information, though I do want to make sure that you have that because she is your partnership specialist and is really, I can't tell you how disappointed she is that she wasn't able to be here today, so.
I've been trying to get to census.gov and it's been timing out.
Oh.
So you might want to try it on yours and see if.
Okay, should I go?
One very quick question, could you go back to one of your first slides where you get the timeline of the mailing deadlines and the phone deadlines?
Sure.
Very first slide.
Did I pass it, or?
No, keep going.
And
There,
you,
right there. Right
oh,
there.
whoops, sorry, yeah.
So is the majority of this committee's work, will that take place prior to late April? Is that a good way to think about timeline? Or?
Yeah, basically what we want to do now is we would like the committee to for now, concentrate on jobs. And but also begin to think about educating folks that they're gonna start getting this in the mail, because let's face it, I don't even wanna count the number of days away it is. But we wanna make sure that when they get it in the mail, they're expecting it, you know? So we do wanna make sure that we get the message out, that expect this in March, you know? Some folks may go ahead and respond as soon as possible. I mean, so a little bit about April 1. April 1 is, I mean, if you're living someplace now and you know you're going to be living there April 1, then you go ahead and respond. April 1 is a day that we have to set a specific day, because otherwise it gets very confusing about whether or not a new baby gets counted or not, you know? If the baby is born on or before April 1st, they get counted. If they're born on April 2nd, they don't get counted. The same with deaths, the same with folks moving. Maybe they're moving right around that date. Well, where are they going to be on April 1st? So that's why we have the April 1st date. On the other hand, you know, let's think about snowbirds. We want people counted where they live and sleep most of the time. Because that's where they use the most resources, right? So we want them counted there. So we know that maybe our snowbirds might still be in Arizona and Florida and locations like that on April 1st. They may not be back yet. We want to make sure we get the message out. They need to be counted where they live and sleep most of the time, which is maybe here.
So we use the term primary residence, or?
Pretty much, yeah. And so you will find that we have actually a fact sheet on our website that talks about residence criteria. It gives residence criteria so that you can get up to date on what those residence criteria actually are. And we like to say criteria. We don't make rules. People need to respond as best they can. But we have the guidelines for residence criteria in order to ensure that folks are counted where they live and sleep most of the time. And if that's not where they actually are on April 1st, then they probably want to be counted where they live and sleep most of the time. But if there's any ambiguity there about that, and if they're transient or moving around, or they're moving, or they're not sure where to be counted, and that maybe they have kids and they're separated, and the kids, you know, stay here 1 week and stay here 1 week. Well, we really only wanted the kids counted once, so let's count them where they are on April 1st.
And brings up the big jail/prison conversation. We have the better part of 1,000 people in our, or beds at least, in our Dane County Jail. Some of the folks that live there come from Fitchburg, but if they are in Madison in the jail, they get counted as Madison residents.
That is something I am going to avoid commenting on or speaking to at this point, but what I will say is that we do, that is part of our group quarters operation. And so those folks generally are counted where they are on April 1st. And so the group quarters would be better able to answer your questions on that than I can. But generally speaking, yeah, they are counted where they are on April 1st.
I know we had, for the redistricting following the last, we had that question related to, we do have a prison in Fitchburg.
Yeah.
With like 400 people or something, and the question was, well, do they get counted as, so this is half of the same question that will come up again
Right,
for redistricting.
yeah, and it comes up every time, and it is always a, you know, it is always a question, but basically, they would be counted at group quarters. So some of the group quarters such as that, the jails and the prisons have options of how they are counted, and sometimes they just simply go onto an electronic form. But they don't do that until April 1st, because, you know, they need to know who is actually there on April 1st as folks come and go, that kind of thing, so.
So Patty, just a quick follow-up. So by the time, when you guys start knocking on doors, this committee's work is, generally speaking, completed?
Well, not really, because, well, I mean, what we hope is that we really want to get the word out and educate folks early, obviously. We want to make sure that they're responding through April. When we get into May and we're out knocking on doors, we're still going to ask for your help because we want to make sure they answer the doors, you know? So we want to make sure that they know that the person that's there is answering the door. Some of the things I don't know so much, but if you have a large rental population or probably or multi-unit housing, sometimes it's very difficult for our enumerators to get in. To some of those areas. So this is where the Complete Count Committee can be very helpful by making sure that they have outreach into the rental associations, perhaps the managers of these complexes, that kind of thing, to say, can you get these enumerators in? Can you make sure that your residents there respond? Can you put up signs to say it's important to respond? And also let them in so that they can get the folks counted, you know, because it's important to the community. Those types of things. So there's still a lot of outreach to do, you know, until we're finished in July. And then, of course, hopefully we're finished in July. And then, of course, you know, you need to stay together so that we can do a big thank you. And a big celebration of a great count, right?
Just keeping things moving, I know some committee members have other commitments
Sure.
this morning. Any other final questions for Patty? Very helpful.
Thank you.
And we'll certainly be in touch with Becky if needed.
Great, thank you so much, and I'll leave these with you.
Great.
And if you need more, just let Becky know. I would say look at the website. Some of the things that are on the website she can get for you in hard copies, some she can't, so.
Are those links live through the PDF that we are looking at on our computers right now?
I'm sorry?
The links that are embedded in this PDF?
I don't know if they are or not. I didn't
Okay.
actually try them. They might be.
Okay.
Sometimes they are, sometimes
What page are you looking at?
It was just this. I was just wondering if those links were live.
On what page, though?
There was a few numerous pages with
Okay.
some links on there. I just thought it'd be a little bit easier to
I could have put
refer
them
back
on
to
the
this.
screen,
and-
but I'll wait
All right, there we go. I was just going to give one a shot. Looks like probably
Yeah,
not.
just
huh?
cut and paste. Okay.
Okay.
Great.
But yeah, you as committee members, you have this packet, so you can, explore on your own as interested, so, yep.
And to folks that watch the recording, this information is available in the packet for
Yep.
today's agenda.
Yep.
And that's available online.
Great.
Okay, well, thank you very much for having me, and as I said, please direct your questions to Becky. And Becky is great. She's the first partnership specialist in Wisconsin.
Do you have the address for the office yet?
Oh, I was pulling that up right here. Let me see if I can get it for you.
I think we're going to move on to city outreach strategy, timeline, tasks and timelines.
I just wanted to quickly, everybody should have one of these as a hard copy in front of them. We can maybe just spend a few minutes talking about this, and then we can get you guys out of here. So this is just a draft of some ideas I had that, in terms of outreach, that this committee can undertake. I think maybe a good approach here would be to spend maybe 15 minutes or so on this right now, and then I will email this to you, and you guys can plug in your thoughts, and then we come back at the next meeting with the second draft of this, and then approve it as a committee. And then we will work to implement the tasks that we've identified. Does that sound like a good plan for everybody?
Sure.
So again, maybe just, I'm not going to read this to you, but these are some ideas I had based on stuff I've seen other communities do. We could do a tagline on all our emails. That would be probably a discussion with IT.
And agendas. Adam.
Yep, there you go.
Agendas.
We could basically prepare some summary materials, one-pagers, post stuff on the webpage, get stuff in the newspapers. I know David's Senior Center has a newsletter they put out. We could obviously do some outreach there. General emails, as Patty mentioned, outreach to schools, outreach to faith groups, promote on our video, with our video people. Ruth, I think Patty mentioned polling, information at polling. I don't know if there's something we could do with billings. I don't know, maybe that's a discussion with utilities. But just thinking about getting stuff out to people with our other correspondence. Posting, Carmen, I think you'll be maybe helpful in some of that regard, connecting with apartment managers. So again, those are just some ideas I had. Certainly if other people have thoughts, we can spend a few minutes discussing now. If not, again, I can clean this up, email it out to people, get me your thoughts, and then we'll come back at the next meeting with the second draft. So I guess I'll just throw it out there for discussion.
Yeah, I think from the senior center standpoint, going back to staff and certainly with the social workers that are out in the field will be a good resource for the senior apartment complexes. They know the managers. They have good resources that way. But outside of just the city website, we have our Facebook page. We have, again, the newsletter that goes out to about 850 individuals. A lot of foot traffic in through the building that way as well. So I think from that standpoint, we have a good wealth of contacts through the senior center. I guess I have a couple of questions about the promotional material. Is that something that we are able to access through?
Becky can get that for you, get some for you. Depending if you have events coming up, we do have sometimes some things available. They come and go. And we've been told that there's going to be a lot more available, but we haven't been able to get a lot of it yet. But we can get things like, we have the pens, we have this, we have some water bottles, sometimes some bags, and there's mostly new things coming up. So Becky would be your resource for getting those materials. And I would suggest that if you have events, you say,
Yeah, for example, we have our Valentine's event this Friday, so the table tent options for a taker would be, if I could have that little stack there, that would be something immediate that we could get out.
If there's something, if I can get you something, I don't know, I have a car full of some things, I don't know what you might want. I have What Valentine event is that? Is that?
It's just a lunch that we have with some music at the senior center that, you know,
Wonderful, yeah.
we're going to have some traffic through on that day. And
Yeah, so I can get you more of these if you think. I don't know if this is enough.
I think that's probably a good start, and
Okay,
these flyers
Okay.
here we can get out immediately.
okay.
But so
all right.
Becky would be our connection if we need more of the hard copy
Okay.
stuff. Okay, yep.
Yeah.
And you guys feel free to email Becky independently of me. You know, you guys can reach out to her as needed, so, yep.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and so she's right here in Madison, so, you know, she's local and handy, and will be really, really excited, is very excited to work with you. As I said, really disappointed she couldn't be here today.
And
So,
she'll have some boxes of stuff at the Crossroads Drive office, correct?
Probably, yeah, well, she'll probably have it in her car, but most of her stuff is in our cars, but yeah, she has access to that. Some of the things we do have to order, so if you do have an event, it'd be great to know a week to 10 days in advance, so we can try to
Sure.
get it, especially if it's a lot of things. Most of the paper things we have, but if it were anything like pens or things like that to hand out, those we probably think take a little bit longer to get. So if you can think ahead to what events you might have coming up, even, you know, through May, just write them all down and she'll make sure she can get things for it.
Yeah, voting is what, the 18th?
I'm sorry, the primary's the 18th.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah, a few things coming up.
And we'll have BB9 coming up
Yep.
early in March that we might be able to ask her to speak at.
Oh,
and
definitely,
Make some
she would love
materials
that, yeah.
available.
Yeah, chamber event, yeah.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes, definitely, for sure, yeah.
Mhm.
And as I said, she'll get you, you know, order things for you, and that kind of thing. She can get you lots of hard copies of some of these things. Some things we aren't able to get yet in hard copy, but some things we are, so.
Great.
Thank you.
Other ideas on outreach activities?
Well, I saw the Flash Facebook page is Lisa Sanford. Do you
Mhm.
maybe want to reach out to her and let her know that
Yep.
she could be very useful.
Yep.
Yes.
The primary purpose for people voting, you know, is at the polls, we want them voting, but it would be nice to have some information as they're exiting.
Mhm.
So whatever we could get from Becky in that regard would be helpful.
Mhm.
Maybe having things in meeting rooms, in the council chambers,
Mhm.
just when people are coming and going.
And I had mentioned nextdoor.com. I don't think the city would necessarily take an official role on nextdoor.com, but
Yep.
we could certainly encourage citizen
Yep.
interaction.
Yep, and what, I almost envision like just a general press release that we can just have out there, that if next door people are interested in posting that, we'll make them aware that it's available, then they can distribute as they see fit, so, yep.
I'd also, maybe even a texting question, does this land as a thing on do not call list? Or would it go through to numbers?
This is always an interesting question. People always say, well, we always need to know we have the most solicitors possible. We're not solicitors. We are, this is a constitutional mandate. And so it is the, you know, United States government. So we do not fall under those solicitor, things.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have to figure out the most effective way to, because I would love texting to go viral, particularly in Spanish and Black communities, because that is how they communicate with one another more than anything.
Yep.
So that'll be a big question, is how do we get people to pass on the message? We can shoot out to various cell phone numbers, but we have a limited number of cell phone numbers. So we need people to pick up and pass on. And that would be true of Facebook and other things as well, but particularly cell phone.
Any other thoughts on outreach ideas?
Did you write down mayoral proclamation?
Yep, got it.
Okay.
Okay, so like I said, what I will do is I will clean this up a little bit based on the feedback. I will email it out to you guys and then maybe ask for a date to respond back by with additional thoughts. And then again, I'll come to that. We'll come to our second meeting with that second draft, and then as a committee, we will approve that outreach strategy. Any other thoughts on that?
Sounds good.
Okay.
And really quick, we're going to need to, before we start talking about the census itself, she's like, please make sure people know to apply for jobs.
Yep.
That's the number one
Mhm.
first message out.
Crucial, we can't do census without workers.
David, I think we can move to other business.
Yeah, other business?
And I just put that on there as, this is our first meeting, so if there's other things that folks wanted to talk about, or if they weren't quite clear on what we're doing here, this is kind of a catch-all agenda item, so. Any questions, general comments? Everybody knows why they're here? All right, good.
Report from department.
Nothing?
All right, announcements?
So I think one thing we should do is probably set the next committee date, or at least maybe a week range, and I can send out a doodle poll and get your guys' best times. But I was thinking to kind of keep things moving, probably a pretty quick turnaround. We could either meet the last weekend in February or the first weekend in March. Again, because census will be coming up in April already, so I think we need to get this thing kind of hammered out. So I'll just throw that out to the committee as a body, if you guys prefer the last week in February or the first week in March. And then once you pick, maybe that week, I will do a doodle poll to get a best date.
Kind of the sooner the better.
So
Yeah.
meaning last week in February? People okay with that? Okay. Do we want to set a date and time now, or do you want me to check your calendars?
We need to check
I think we
calendars
need to
probably.
check.
Okay. Are there days or times that generally work better for folks? Monday mornings?
Daytimes are typically okay for me.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I will just check your calendars, and Carmen, I'll connect with you too. I know you got other things. And yeah, I think, this weekend I'll get this thing out, and then I'll get out a doodle poll, and then we'll get set up, because we'll have to actually have the agenda posted by next Thursday, the 20th already, so, which we can do.
One thing I did want to mention before, though, is please do let Becky know if you do want her to, she's happy to come back to any of the meetings
Great,
and
great.
assist at all. Also, I would like to get a photo if I could before I leave. And inside your packet on the left-hand side is a form I would like you to fill out the front, not the back, just the front. It was just a release in case we wanted to use that photo. But generally, probably will. Also, I wanted to point out in your packet, there's a lot of information that you can go through, but I didn't go into a lot of detail in my presentation. So there's a lot of hard copy information there, particularly census terms and definitions, which can be somewhat overwhelming. So if you could sign that. I also would appreciate it if you could sign just kind of sign in on a sheet with your contact, your phone, your email, your name, and your organization that you're representing, perhaps.
Do you have a form ready, or should we just scribble on the back of
I'm
it?
gonna get it right
Okay,
now.
great.
I was going to
Or else we could just,
go to my car and get it earlier. but-
we can just do something on the back of this,
That's
is
what
that
I was
easier?
thinking,
Okay,
sure, yeah,
so
I got
name, email, and phone, and title?
Yeah, here, let me just, that way. Start with you, and then I'll get it passed around, thank you. And you can decide where you'd like to have your photo op.
Sure.
that to Becky so that she will know, you know, who all was here and, and I guess, I don't know who this, that's not here, if you have even just the name, you can put it down.
Yeah, we can fill it
They
in.
weren't present, but,
Yep.
they are going to be on the committee, and that's great, so. We would also, if you're representing the senior organization, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Senior
Yes.
center, is it, that next door, right?
Yes.
Okay. So we would like to make sure that we get you added as a partner as well, into our database so that, Congressman knows that you are participating.
Yeah.
Seniors are near and dear to my heart and a concern for me this time around with the census for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I really, you know, there's so many scams out there. It's going to be, we really need to make sure they know what it is they should fill out. So I really feel like we really,
Yeah, we already have folks talking about that, and so the communication has started.
yeah.
So maybe a photo, we'd stand around the screen, would that make sense,
Sure, or if you have something out in the hallway, we can do that too, or if you
Okay.
want to stand by the flag here. or-
Yeah, whatever, I'll defer to your
Whatever you
thoughts.
do. It's up to you.
Yeah, 5520
I'm gonna move my things over if you want.
Should we
East facing.
officially adjourn the meeting before we do photo
Good
op?
point, yes,
Sure,
yes.
yeah, wait ahead, go ahead and finish whatever you're doing.
So is
Just
this,
wanted to bring that up.
So I guess, yes.
Bring that out the door.
So again, I think everyone's clear on the next steps, so I think with adjournment, the next,
yeah, so this is where I say motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Meeting adjourned.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Meeting adjourned.
great.
Thanks, Matt.